Poor cleaning. Lady danced at work, not knowing the millionaire CEO was watching everything. And imagine this. A young woman, tired from a long day of scrubbing floors and wiping down windows, loses herself in the rhythm of her favorite song. She's dancing with a mop like it's her partner, laughing at her own moves as if no one is watching. But what she doesn't realize is that someone is watching. Someone who holds the power to change her life forever. This isn't just another workplace story. It's a tale about unexpected connections, hidden strengths, and how sometimes the smallest moments can lead to the biggest transformations. Today, we're diving into the journey of Jessica Miller, a poor cleaning lady whose simple act of joy caught the eye of Nathan Walker, the millionaire CEO of Foster Industries. What happens next will make you question everything you thought you knew about love, ambition, and second chances. Jessica was never one to shy away from being herself, even when the world seemed determined to push her down. At 25 years old, she worked tirelessly to make ends meet, spending her days mopping hallways and polishing glass walls in an office building that felt more like a fortress than a workplace. To most people, she blended into the background, as a blur of loose t-shirts, sweatpants, and messy buns. But inside, Jessica carried a spark that couldn't be dimmed. On this particular day, while everyone else was focused on meetings and deadlines, she decided to turn the empty hallway into her own personal dance floor. Little did she know, behind a mirrored wall stood Nathan Walker, the man who ran the entire company. As he watched her twirl and laugh, something stirred within him, something he hadn't felt in years. Was it curiosity, admiration, or maybe just the realization that there was more to life than spreadsheets and suits? Nathan wasn't your typical CEO. Sure, he wore tailored suits and commanded boardrooms with ease, but beneath his polished exterior lay a man burdened by expectations. He had spent years climbing the corporate ladder, sacrificing personal happiness for professional success. His life revolved around numbers, strategies, and maintaining the perfect image. But as he stood there, silently observing Jessica's carefree performance, he found himself questioning whether any of those things truly mattered. Here was someone completely unapologetic about who they were. Someone who radiated authenticity in a place where pretense often ruled supreme. And yet, their worlds couldn't have been more different. While Jessica dreamed of paying off bills and finding a little peace, Nathan grappled with multi-million-dollar deals and keeping shareholders happy. Their paths weren't supposed to cross, but fate had other plans. The moment that changed everything came sooner than either of them expected. It started innocently enough. Jessica, tasked with delivering coffee to the executive meeting room, tripped over the carpet and spilled 4 cups directly onto Nathan's pristine white shirt. Mortified, she stammered apologies, convinced she'd just ruined her chances of staying employed. But instead of anger, Nathan responded with calm amusement. "Good," he said, almost smiling. "I hate bitter coffee." That single comment set off a chain reaction neither of them could have predicted. Over the next few days, rumors spread through the office like wildfire. Some said Jessica was the boss's secret niece. Others whispered about a forbidden romance. Meanwhile, Nathan began seeing her, not as the clumsy coffee girl, but as someone refreshingly honest. And exactly what his company needed. As weeks turned into months, Jessica found herself thrust into a role she never imagined. No longer confined to mops and buckets, she became Nathan's unofficial advisor, offering insights that cut through layers of corporate jargon and revealed truths no one else dared to say out loud. Her sharp wit and fearless honesty challenged the status quo, earning both admiration and resistance from those around her. Yet, amidst all the chaos, a deeper connection began to form between her and Nathan. They came from opposite ends of the spectrum. He, the powerful leader bound by tradition. She, the free-spirited dreamer, unafraid to break the rules. Together, they navigated a maze of challenges, including the sudden reappearance of Nathan's ex-fiancée, Victoria Chase, a woman whose presence threatened to unravel everything they had built. But here's the twist. Just when it seemed like Jessica and Nathan might find their happily ever after, the pressures of the corporate world reached a boiling point. The board demanded answers, forcing Nathan to choose between protecting his legacy or standing by the woman who had changed his perspective on life. For Jessica, the stakes were equally high. Would she continue fighting for a place in a system that didn't always welcome outsiders? Or would she walk away and risk losing the man she had grown to love? With emotions running high and decisions looming on the horizon, one thing became clear. Nothing would ever be the same again. So, what happens when a cleaning lady dances her way into the heart of a millionaire CEO? How does a relationship born out of such unlikely circumstances survive the weight of societal expectations and corporate politics? And most importantly, can two people from vastly different worlds find common ground and build something real? Together, these are the questions we'll explore as we dive deeper into Jessica and Nathan's unforgettable story. Stay tuned because this is only the beginning. In our next episode, we'll uncover the secrets behind Nathan's ultimate decision, the truth about Victoria's intentions, and the surprising ways Jessica proves that true strength lies not in titles or wealth, but in courage and authenticity. Don't forget to hit subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss a single moment of this incredible journey. Trust me, you won't want to look away. The morning after Nathan's temporary step down from the executive board, Jessica found herself sitting at her desk in the makeshift office on the 34th floor. The room felt smaller now, not because of its size, but because of the weight of everything that had happened. She stared at the stack of files in front of her, each one labeled with neat tabs and corporate jargon. Words like synergy, alignment, and optimization. It wasn't just work anymore, it was responsibility. Responsibility for a team, for ideas that could shape the company, and most importantly, for proving to everyone watching that she belonged here. Nathan's decision still lingered heavily in her mind. He'd chosen her, not out of obligation or guilt, but because he believed in what she brought to the table. That belief was both empowering and terrifying. Every time someone walked past her office door, she wondered if they were whispering about how she didn't deserve this role. Some probably were, but others, like Letitia, who popped her head in during lunch breaks, reminded Jessica why she was there. "You're doing something no one else dared to do," Letitia said once, handing her a sandwich. Don't let their stares make you forget that. Meanwhile, Nathan was adjusting to life. As chairman instead of CEO, his days were quieter, filled with strategy meetings and long hours reviewing reports. But his nights were restless. He thought about the board's ultimatum often, the way they framed it as protecting the company's image, while really trying to protect themselves from change. Victoria's presence loomed over him too. Though she was technically only advising on investor negotiations, her sharp comments and calculated smiles made it clear she hadn't given up on influencing the company, or him. Victoria wasn't outright hostile toward Jessica, but her actions spoke volumes. During a meeting about the new app redesign, she subtly questioned Jessica's qualifications in front of the entire IT team. "I'm sure your perspective is valuable," Victoria had said, her tone dripping with insincerity. "But perhaps we should focus on technical expertise before diving into creative solutions." Jessica, however, didn't flinch. She leaned forward, looked Victoria straight in the eye, and replied, "Creativity solves problems technology can't even see." Yet, the room fell silent, and though Victoria plastered on a polite smile, her jaw tightened ever so slightly. As weeks passed, tensions within the company grew. Ethan, Nathan's older brother, became increasingly vocal about his concerns. He cornered Jessica one afternoon near the elevators, his voice low but firm. "Do you realize what you're risking?" he asked, glancing around to ensure no one was listening. "This isn't just about you and my brother. If things go south, it won't just be Nathan stepping down. It'll be chaos for everyone." Jessica crossed her arms, refusing to back down. "And if I leave, what then?" Everything goes back to how it was, pretending nothing's wrong until the next crisis hits. Ethan didn't respond, but the look in his eyes said enough. He thought she was naive to believe real change was possible. Despite the mounting pressure, Jessica threw herself into her new role. She assembled a diverse team of employees from various departments, calling them the Real Space Project. Their goal was simple: find practical ways to improve daily operations based on real feedback from frontline workers. At first, many doubted whether such an initiative could succeed in a place as rigid as Foster Industries. But when Jessica presented their first proposal, a complete overhaul of the internal communication system, the board couldn't ignore the data. Employee engagement scores skyrocketed in departments where the pilot program had been implemented. Still, not everyone was convinced. Victoria remained a constant shadow, watching every move Jessica made. One evening, as Jessica stayed late finishing a report, she noticed Victoria lingering outside her office door. For a moment, they locked eyes through the glass partition. Victoria stepped inside without invitation, closing the door behind her. "I have to admit," she began, her voice smooth and deliberate, "you've surprised me. Most people in your position would have crumbled under the scrutiny by now." Jessica set her pen down, meeting Victoria's gaze. "Is that supposed to be a compliment?" Victoria tilted her head slightly, studying her. "Call it curiosity. You don't fit the mold, Jessica. Not here, not anywhere. Yet somehow you've managed to carve out a space for yourself. How does it feel, knowing half the company thinks you're riding on my ex-fiancé's coattails?" "It feels like none of their business," Jessica shot back, standing up. "What I do here isn't about Nathan. It's about making this company better. For everyone, including the people cleaning the floors." For a brief second, Victoria's mask slipped. There was a flicker of something in her expression. Respect, maybe, or perhaps envy. Before either of them could say more, Victoria turned and left, leaving Jessica alone with her thoughts. Back home that night, Jessica replayed the conversation in her head. She knew Victoria wasn't wrong about the whispers and rumors swirling around her. What she didn't know was how much longer she could hold her ground against forces far bigger than herself. And then there was Nathan. They hadn't talked much about the future since his announcement, but she could see the toll it was taking on him. He wanted to fight for them, for the changes they were bringing, but the cost was high. The breaking point came during a board presentation. Jessica stood confidently at the front of the room, explaining the Real Space Project's latest findings. The numbers were undeniable, the testimonials compelling. As she wrapped up, she glanced at Nathan seated in the back, his face unreadable. Then she turned to Victoria, who sat poised at the center of the table. "Any questions?" Jessica asked, her voice steady. Victoria raised an eyebrow. "Just one. Where do you see yourself in 5 years, Miss Miller?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Jessica took a deep breath. "Right here, making sure this company remembers who it serves. Not just shareholders, but the people who keep it running every single day. A murmur rippled through the room. Victoria smirked, clearly expecting a different answer, but before anyone could react further, Nathan stood up. "Enough," he said firmly, his voice cutting through the tension. "We've heard enough doubts, enough criticism. What we need now is action, and I trust Jessica to lead that charge." The room fell silent. All eyes were on Nathan as he walked to the front, standing beside Jessica. For a moment, it felt like the world stopped spinning. Then slowly, applause began to build. From the corners of the room, tentative at first, then growing louder. Even Ethan joined in, albeit reluctantly. Outside the meeting room, the hallway buzzed with chatter. Word spread quickly. Nathan Walker had publicly backed Jessica Miller, solidifying her position despite the board's skepticism. It was a bold move, one that signaled a shift in power dynamics nobody saw coming. But as Jessica and Nathan shared, a quiet moment later that evening in the garden outside the building, neither of them could shake the feeling that the hardest battles were yet to come. The company was changing, yes, but so were they, and as they held hands under the soft glow of string lights, they both knew that whatever happened next, they'd face it together. What happens next will determine not just their futures, but the fate of Foster Industries itself. Will Jessica's vision triumph over tradition? Can Nathan balance his loyalty to the company with his love for her? And will Victoria step aside or strike back with everything she has? Stay tuned to find out. As the night deepened, Nathan and Jessica sat on that wooden bench, their hands intertwined. The weight of everything they had been through finally settling into a quiet calm. But even in this moment of peace, neither of them could ignore the challenges still ahead. The board's ultimatum hadn't disappeared just because they exchanged vows. It lingered like an uninvited guest at their celebration. And Victoria, though quieter now, wasn't entirely out of the picture yet. Her sharp eyes watched from afar during the wedding, her presence a subtle reminder that not everyone believed in happy endings. For people like Jessica, the next morning, as sunlight streamed through the windows of Foster Industries headquarters, Jessica walked into her new office as the head of the culture committee. It was surreal. She had gone from mopping floors to shaping the future of one of the most influential companies in the industry. Yet, instead of feeling triumphant, she felt the immense responsibility resting on her shoulders. She opened her laptop and stared at the screen, where emails flooded in with subject lines ranging from "Congratulations" to "We need to talk about strategy." For the first time, she wondered if she was ready for this. Nathan, meanwhile, stepped back into his role as CEO, but with a noticeable shift. He wasn't the same rigid leader who once prioritized image over substance. Now he moved through the halls with a lighter step, stopping to chat with employees whose names he actually knew. People noticed the change, and while some whispered about favoritism, others began to see what Jessica brought to the table: authenticity. Under her leadership, initiatives rolled out faster than anyone expected. Employee feedback became the cornerstone of decision-making, and morale soared. Even Ethan softened slightly, admitting during a private conversation with Nathan that maybe, just maybe, Jessica was exactly what the company needed. But tensions reached a boiling point when Victoria returned unexpectedly. This time she didn't come alone. Accompanied by two representatives from M&T Ventures, she called for an emergency board meeting. Jessica could feel the air crackle with unease as she entered the room, her heart pounding. Victoria wasted no time getting to the point. "Foster Industries has always stood for tradition," she said, her voice cutting through the silence. "And while innovation is admirable, We must ensure it doesn't compromise stability. Jessica clenched her fists under the table, but forced herself to stay composed. When it was her turn to speak, she stood up slowly, every eye in the room fixed on her. Tradition is important, she began, locking eyes with Victoria. But so is progress. If we cling only to what feels safe, we'll never grow. And growth isn't about perfection. It's about learning, adapting, and sometimes making mistakes along the way. Her words hung in the air, raw and powerful. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, surprisingly, one of the older directors nodded. "She's right," he said gruffly. "We've rested on our laurels for too long. Maybe it's time we took a risk." Victoria's jaw tightened, but she didn't argue further. Instead, she excused herself, leaving behind a ripple of uncertainty. As the meeting adjourned, Nathan caught Jessica's arm gently. "You okay?" he asked, concern etched across his face. She nodded, though her hands were trembling. "I think I just made myself a few more enemies," she admitted, with a shaky laugh. In the weeks that followed, the company underwent significant changes. Jessica's team implemented programs that empowered employees at every level, giving them a voice in decisions, big and small. Morale skyrocketed, productivity improved, and Foster Industries started gaining recognition, not just for its profits, but for its workplace culture. Meanwhile, Nathan worked tirelessly to rebuild trust with the board, proving that stepping aside temporarily hadn't weakened him. It had strengthened both him and the company. One evening, months later, Jessica found Nathan waiting for her. In the garden outside the building, he held a small box in his hand, wrapped in plain brown paper. "What's this?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Open it," he urged, smiling softly. Inside was a tiny rubber duck, the kind you'd find floating in a bathtub. On its belly, someone had painted the words, "Swim together." "It's a reminder," Nathan said, his voice warm, "of where we started and how far we've come. You taught me that success isn't about titles or suits. It's about being brave enough to be yourself, even when the world tries to tell you otherwise." Tears welled up in Jessica's eyes as she hugged him tightly. They had faced judgment, doubt, and countless obstacles. But together, they had built something real, something worth fighting for. As the seasons changed, so did Foster Industries. Rubber ducks became a symbol of unity within the company, appearing in offices, meeting rooms, and even promotional materials. Employees joked about starting a duck fan club, but beneath the humor lay a deeper truth. The company had transformed into a place where everyone mattered, not just the ones wearing ties. And Jessica? She remained the same spirited woman who once danced with a mop, only now she did it with confidence. On her last day before maternity leave, a surprise neither she nor Nathan had anticipated, she gathered her team in the break room. "Life is messy," she told them, holding up a cup of coffee. "But it's also beautiful. Don't let anyone convince you that you're too small to make a difference. Because sometimes all it takes is spilling a little coffee to change the world." With that, she turned on her favorite playlist, grabbed a mop, and danced her way out of the room. The crowd erupted into cheers, clapping as she twirled and laughed, completely unbothered by the chaos around her. After all, she had learned that life wasn't about avoiding spills. It was about embracing them, cleaning up, and moving forward with joy. Years later, when people asked how Nathan and Jessica met, they always smiled. "It's a long story," Nathan would say, glancing at Jessica. "But the short version, she spilled coffee on me and saved my life." Their journey reminded everyone who heard it that love, courage, and authenticity have the power to rewrite even the most unlikely stories. And as for Jessica and Nathan, They lived happily ever after, not because life stopped throwing challenges their way, but because they faced each one together, hand in hand, dancing through the messiness with laughter and grace.